There is a stillness that precedes every miracle, a hush beneath the noise, a whisper beneath the mind's questioning voice. And it is there, in that sacred quiet, that the truth begins to bloom. Belief is not a reaction to what is seen. It is the seed that calls the unseen into form. We have been taught to wait for evidence, to cling to proof, to measure reality by what the senses confirm, but the senses are latecomers. They arrive after the fact. The soul, however, knows a deeper law. The soul breathes in faith before form, knowing full well that what you believe is what you will inevitably see. You were not created to be a spectator in the theater of life. You were breathed into existence to be a creator, a dreamer, a divine extension of the invisible. Your thoughts are not idle, they are creative pulses. Your beliefs are not reflections of the world, they are architects of it. Every time you choose to believe in love over fear, in abundance over lack, in healing over despair, you are not lying to yourself, you are speaking the sacred language of the universe. And the universe, ever responsive, listens not to your complaints, but to your conviction. To believe is to step onto the invisible bridge that only appears once your foot touches it. It is not blind, it is visionary. It does not ignore the facts, it transcends them. The facts may describe the moment, but belief shapes the next. What you hold as true within, you call forth without. And so the journey begins not with striving, not with seeing, but with trusting the unseen, trusting that what is felt deeply in your heart is already seeking you in return. The ego scoffs at this. It says, "Show me first and then I'll believe." But the soul smiles softly and replies, "Believe first and the world will rise to meet your vision." The ego lives in the past and in probabilities. It lives by what has been done, what has failed, what cannot be. But the soul lives in eternity. It remembers your birthright. It whispers again and again, you are a creator, not a victim, not an observer, a creator. And when you listen, when you soften, when you dare to lean into that inner knowing, something miraculous happens. The world begins to shift, not because it changed, but because you did. You stopped waiting to be convinced and started choosing to be aligned. You stopped demanding signs and started being the sign. You became the evidence of the invisible. The living proof that what is true in spirit is truer than what is visible in form. Rumi once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." But how can pain become a cure unless you first believe it can? Belief is the alchemy. It transforms the ache into an awakening. It turns the wound into a window, but you must be willing to look beyond the scar to see what the mind cannot yet confirm. Healing begins not with medicine, but with belief. And belief is not passive. It is not a hope. It is an act of spiritual defiance in the face of doubt. It is the choice to align with what is eternal rather than what is temporary. You are not your conditions. You are not your past. You are not what happened to you. You are the awareness witnessing it all. You are the one who can choose a new thought, a new feeling, a new vibration. And when you do, when you root yourself in the frequency of belief, life itself rearranges. Doors open, people appear, opportunities align. Not because fate has changed, but because your perception has cleared. The universe cannot override your free will. It cannot deliver what your belief system refuses. If you believe you are unworthy, no amount of success will satisfy. If you believe you are broken, no amount of love will stick. If you believe life is against you, you will find enemies in every corner. But the opposite is also true. If you believe you are enough, life will reflect that wholeness. If you believe you are loved, you will become a beacon for more love. If you believe in peace, you will find it within first, then without. And so the true work is internal, not fixing the world, not fixing others, not even fixing yourself, but remembering that you are not here to react to life, you are here to create it from the inside out, from the depths of your being, from the silent well of knowing that existed long before the world taught you to doubt. This is not delusion, this is not wishful thinking, this is alignment with truth. The kind of truth that Jesus spoke of when he said, "As you believe, so shall it be done unto you." The kind of truth that Lao Tzu pointed to when he wrote, "The Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone." Belief is not about doing more. It is about being in such harmony with your source that what needs to be done flows through you effortlessly. When you live this way, faith is no longer something you strive to maintain. It becomes your atmosphere, your essence. You begin to walk not by sight but by presence. You begin to speak not to impress but to express truth. You begin to love not to get but to give. And in that giving, the circle completes. What you believe becomes what you live. And so I ask you now, with the deepest reverence, what do you believe? Not in theory, not in words, but in the quietest part of your being, when the world falls away and you are left alone with yourself, what do you truly believe? Do you believe you are loved? Do you believe you are worthy? Do you believe you are here for a reason far greater than survival? Because whatever your answer, life will mirror it. Not to punish, not to test, but to awaken. It is not life that must change. It is your lens, your posture, your energy. The soul is not waiting for proof. It is waiting for permission. Permission to believe in beauty again, in grace, in divine timing, in joy for no reason, in peace that does not depend on circumstances. You were born with this permission. Now is the moment to use it. Believe first, and you will see second, because when your inner world aligns with truth, the outer world cannot help but follow. That is the sacred design. That is the way of miracles. And that is who you are, an extension of the miraculous, a child of the eternal, a creator cloaked in human form. So believe in what your eyes cannot yet see, and one day your eyes will behold it with awe. Not because you forced it into being, but because you remembered who you are. There is a grace that moves through you when you stop questioning your belonging, not the belonging to a group or a place or a name, but the belonging to existence itself. You did not appear here by accident. You were not summoned into being without purpose. The same intelligence that painted the galaxies across the sky and carved rivers through the mountains also dreamed you into existence. And that dream, that sacred intention, is not waiting to be validated by your achievements. It is already fulfilled in your very being. You are not here to accumulate worth through effort. You are here to awaken to the worth that breathes in you before a single task is done. The oak tree does not earn its right to exist. It grows because it is. And so must you. Grow not by striving, but by yielding, by allowing the light of your own divine presence to nourish the soil of your life. There is nothing you need to chase. There is only everything you need to allow. To live in belief is to move through life as if the answer is already yes, not because you've been given a guarantee, but because you have aligned yourself with the vibration of trust. Trust not in outcomes, but in essence. Trust in the rhythm that beats your heart and spins the earth. You do not have to understand it. You only have to surrender to it. Not surrender as in giving up, but surrender as in opening up, opening to the possibility that what you seek is seeking you with equal devotion. Doubt may knock and fear may speak, but neither are the voice of your soul. The soul does not panic. It does not shout. It does not race to conclusions. It whispers in a language too subtle for the hurried mind, too sacred for the cynical heart, and yet it never stops speaking. It waits, it watches, it holds space until you are quiet enough to hear. To believe first is to remember that guidance does not come with fanfare. It comes with feeling, with intuition, with those inexplicable nudges that defy logic but somehow feel more true than anything you've ever been told. Follow those. They are not accidents. They are echoes of your divine path calling you forward one gentle step at a time. There is no need to have it all figured out. The path unfolds not in advance but in real time, revealed by your trust, shaped by your presence. You are not walking toward clarity. You are walking with clarity. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, compassion over control, presence over performance, you take another step into alignment with your higher self. And when you align, the world reflects back the beauty you hold within. Not because the world changed, but because your eyes did. The miracle was never out there. It was waiting for your belief to catch up with your truth. You are not an apprentice to love. You are its embodiment. You are not seeking peace. You are the field in which peace blooms. You are not separate from Source. You are the breath of Source in motion. So let go now of the idea that you must prove your value. Let go of the inner courtroom where your worth is debated and weighed. Step out of the trial and into the temple of your own being. There, the verdict is already rendered. You are divine, you are worthy, you are whole. Let this knowing shape your choices. Let it anchor your voice. Let it guide your hands as you offer your gifts to the world, not from need, but from overflow. Not to be seen, but to be felt. not to impress, but to bless. Your life is not a test to be passed. It is a sacred dance to be lived. And when you dance from the rhythm of inner belief, the music of the universe begins to move with you. Serendipity becomes common. Synchronicity becomes the norm, not because the stars suddenly align, but because you did. This is the true shift, from living by effort to living by essence, from chasing answers to becoming the answer, from waiting for signs to being the sign. The light does not wait for permission to shine. It shines because it cannot do otherwise. And neither can you once you remember what you truly are. So breathe now, not to catch your breath, but to feel the divine presence breathing you. And walk not to arrive somewhere new, but to remember that you are already home. There is an invisible thread that has been guiding you all along through every storm, every silence, every moment of uncertainty. You may have called it luck, or chance, or coincidence, but in truth it has never been random. That thread is not spun by the mind, but by the soul. It does not wrap around external outcomes. It weaves itself through your inner awakenings. Each heartbreak, each delay, each detour was not the enemy of your purpose, it was the sculptor of your present. You have not been delayed, you have been deepened. And now you are standing at the edge of remembering, not remembering something new, but remembering what you have always known beneath the noise. That belief is not a strategy, it is a state of being. A state that says, even when I cannot see the path, I am still on it. Even when I do not feel the love, I am still held in it. Even when I do not see the fruit, the seed is still growing. Do not confuse the quiet season for a lifeless one. Do not mistake the void for failure. The greatest transformation happens beneath the surface, in the invisible soil of surrender. What you water with belief will rise not because you forced it, but because you trusted its timing. The caterpillar does not strategize its wings, it simply dissolves and lets go of everything it was, trusting that something wiser is at work. So too must you dissolve the grip of how and when and why and return to the sacred trust of I am. Not I will be, not I hope to be, but I am. This is the vibration of belief. It does not beg, it does not bargain, it does not apologize for itself. It simply declares what is true in spirit and allows the world to adjust accordingly. You are not here to convince life to favor you. Life already has. Your very breath is proof. The air that fills your lungs does not ask whether you have earned it. The sun that warms your skin does not require credentials. The earth beneath your feet does not need persuasion to hold you. These gifts are given freely, endlessly, and without condition. Why then should your self-worth be the exception? The universe is not interested in your resume, it is interested in your radiance. It wants to flow through you, not be impressed by you. You do not inspire the world by being more than you are. You inspire it by being exactly who you are, without defense, without decoration, without delay. And when you step into that sacred authenticity, when your belief becomes not a performance but a posture, miracles cease to be rare. They become ordinary. Because what is a miracle if not the natural result of alignment? When a flower blooms, we do not call it a miracle, though it is. It simply fulfills its nature, and so will you when you stop striving and start allowing. Do not wait for the world to understand you before you believe in yourself. The world is often slow to recognize the divine, especially when it is quiet, unassuming, and wrapped in human skin. But the soul is not here to be seen. It is here to see with the eyes of love, to witness the sacred in all things, especially in yourself. You were not born to chase meaning, you are the meaning. You are the echo of eternity in temporary form. You are the whisper of the infinite, moving through time, touching lives with the quiet power of your being. And when you believe this, not just as an idea, but as your reality, your energy becomes your testimony. Your presence becomes your message. You no longer need to speak to be heard. You no longer need to act to prove. You no longer need to arrive to be enough. Because belief, when it is pure, when it is rooted in truth, becomes vision. And vision, when it is held without fear, becomes reality. So hold your vision not with tension, but with trust. Do not grasp it like a possession. Cradle it like a promise. Let it breathe. Let it evolve. Let it unfold in ways that your mind could never design, but your soul always knew. And when doubts rise, and they will greet them not as enemies, but as visitors, they come not to derail you, but to test your devotion to your own light. Let them pass through like clouds across an endless sky. Let them come, let them go, and remain. Remain in your knowing, remain in your stillness, Remain in your belief, because the world you long for is not out there. It is already forming within you, like dawn gathering beneath the horizon. You need only trust the light before it is visible. Believe first, and you will see second. This is the way of the soul. This is the path of truth. And this is the sacred journey you were born to walk with courage, with reverence, and with love. There will come a moment, not dramatic, not heralded by thunder, but soft like a breath at dawn, when you stop trying to make life happen and begin to let life happen through you. And in that moment, something ancient within you exhales. The weight you didn't realize you were carrying begins to fall away. The striving loses its urgency. The proving dissolves. Because you've remembered what you were never meant to forget. Life is not a race to win. It is a song to surrender to. And belief is the harmony that carries you. You do not need to orchestrate every note. You only need to listen to the rhythm within you, the divine tempo that has been guiding your steps since before you took your first breath. When you believe first, you stop playing small. You stop shrinking your desires to match your doubts. You stop delaying your joy until the outer world provides the evidence you crave. You begin to live not in reaction, but in resonance with your truth, with your vision, with the quiet certainty that what is aligned within must eventually reveal itself without. The oak does not worry if the seedling appears fragile. It trusts the roots it cannot see, and so must you. The roots of your becoming run deep, not in the world's validation, but in the soul's remembrance. When you believe, you send roots downward before the bloom ever rises. You anchor into presence. It moves in spirals, in seasons, in silence. And belief, true belief, is the bridge between your inner world and that sacred rhythm. When you believe first, you become fluent in the language of the divine. You begin to hear the messages in the pause, feel the guidance in the stillness, recognize the sacred choreography unfolding all around you. What once looked like delays become preparations. What once seemed like endings become initiations. And what once appeared as emptiness reveals itself as spaciousness, space for something greater than your mind could have planned. You begin to live as if the miracle is already on its way, because it is. You begin to speak as if healing is already happening, because it is. You begin to move as if love is already flowing, because it is. And the world, once resistant, begins to soften, not because it changed first, but because your energy did. The field around you responds to the field within you. This is not a metaphor, it is a spiritual law. The vibration of belief reshapes reality, not through force, but through frequency. And this frequency is your natural state. Beneath the fears, beneath the doubts, beneath the roles you've been taught to perform, there is a purity in you, a sacred vibration, a pulse of the divine that knows exactly who you are, exactly why you're here, and exactly what you are capable of becoming. That knowing does not need to be earned, it needs to be trusted. You do not need to light up the whole path before you take the first step. You only need to trust that with each step you take in faith, the next one will appear. Life meets you where your belief begins. The universe mirrors your willingness to trust. And so your task is not to figure it all out. Your task is to align with your essence so completely that your very being becomes the map. And when you do, you will look back and realize that nothing was ever truly lost. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every painful turning point, they were all part of the choreography that led you here. Here, to this breath, this heartbeat, this holy moment of awareness. Now, you are no longer searching for the light. You are standing in it. Now, you are no longer begging for a sign. You have become the sign. Now, you are no longer waiting to believe in a better life. You are living as if that life has already begun. And in that living, it does. ChatGPT denoi. There's something holy in your waiting, not the kind of waiting that leans on anxiety or impatience, but the kind that rests in assurance. It is not a pause born of fear, but a stillness infused with faith. You begin to know without needing to grasp that all things are arriving at the perfect moment, not according to your timeline, but according to the rhythm of the universe. And in that sacred waiting, belief becomes more than a concept, it becomes a sanctuary. A place within where the noise is quieted, the striving is surrendered, and the divine timing of all things is allowed to unfold. To believe first is to become rooted in the invisible soil of your soul. It is to trust that the life you feel aching to emerge through you has not been denied, it has simply not yet been revealed. And so you nurture the unseen with the warmth of your faith. You water the soil with gratitude for what is already true in spirit. You tend to your becoming with tenderness, not urgency. Because something beautiful is always germinating in the dark, even when you cannot yet see its form. The caterpillar does not rush its metamorphosis, nor does it mourn the loss of what it once was. It simply dissolves fully, trustingly allowing the mystery to remake it. And so must you allow the mystery to do its sacred work in you, not through effort, but through openness. Belief is not a hammer, it is a doorway. It does not break things open, it invites them to unfold. And unfold they will. Not when the world deems you ready, but when your inner readiness becomes magnetic, when your energy no longer reaches outward for validation, but radiates inward from truth. That is, when life begins to bend in your favor, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Because the universe is not a judge, it is a mirror. It reflects what you are in resonance with. And the more deeply you believe in your own worth, your own light, your own divine path, the more clearly that path appears beneath your feet. You are not walking blindly, you are walking by inner vision, a vision not of the eyes, but of the soul, a sight that perceives not what is, but what is possible. And that possibility becomes your compass, not a fantasy, but a frequency, a tuning of the heart to something higher, something quieter, something truer than the noise of the world. To live by belief is to walk as though the world has already said yes to your essence. And in doing so, you draw forth that yes from places you never expected, from strangers who offer kindness, from opportunities that arrive unannounced, from synchronicities that feel like whispered affirmations from the divine. This is not manipulation, it is resonance. And resonance is the language of the soul. When your inner world becomes undisturbed by the doubts around you, you create a field of energy so coherent, so rooted, so serene, that the external world cannot help but take shape around it. Not instantly, not always dramatically, but inevitably. Because the soul is never in a hurry. It knows that what is meant for you cannot be missed, only delayed by your disbelief. So now, you are being called not to speed up, but to deepen your trust, to deepen your presence, to deepen your knowing that nothing real is ever lost and nothing true arrives before its time. And in this deepening, belief stops being something you do, it becomes who you are. You become the one who remembers. You become the one who radiates. You become the one who no longer begs for the door to open, but who stands so rooted in truth that the door recognizes you as the key. This is the power of believing first. It is the power of living in alignment before evidence arrives. It is the sacred art of walking by light even before the dawn. And in that walk, you become the sunrise. And now, beloved soul, let this be the moment you stop bracing against life and begin breathing with it. Let this be the breath where you release the tension in your shoulders, the urgency in your chest, the questions looping through your mind. Let them fall like autumn leaves, soft, silent, and spent. For they were never yours to carry. They were borrowed from a world that forgot how sacred it is to simply be. You came here not to chase light, but to remember you are it, not to earn love, but to rediscover that you are made of it. Every cell, every breath, every glance you cast into the mirror carries the signature of the divine. And now as you return to belief, not the kind rooted in dogma, but the kind that arises from the marrow of your being, you begin to see the sacred where before you saw only survival. You begin to walk in a world that feels less like a battlefield and more like a cathedral. This is what happens when you believe first. Life stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something that flows from you. Like music through an instrument, like wind through a canyon, like sunlight through stained glass. You are not separate from the source, you are its vessel, its echo, its embodiment in motion. And the more you trust that truth, the more the world around you rearranges itself in response. It is not a magic trick, it is a law of resonance, a holy chemistry that says the inner creates the outer, and what you feel becomes what you see. So choose to feel it now, not later. Not when it's safe, not when it's proven. Feel it now, the joy, the peace, the worthiness, the trust. Let it rise in you like incense in a quiet temple. Let it wrap around you not as a shield, but as a welcome. Because the moment you truly allow yourself to feel the vibration of what you've been waiting for is the moment it begins to find you. The universe does not give you what you beg for, it gives you what you become. And you become it by believing it first. Not when all signs agree, but when the stillness in you whispers, yes, this is already true. Believe it, feel it, live it, and leave the rest to the divine rhythm that has never once failed to keep the planets in motion and the tide on time. There is no rush now, no race, no proving ground, just this eternal moment asking only one thing of you, to trust that what is within you is enough to meet anything that arises around you. Walk gently, walk openly. Walk as one who no longer seeks from the outside what has already been found within. You are not waiting for the miracle. You are the miracle. And all of life is simply waiting for you to believe that first press, so it can show you in every language, in every sunrise, in every sacred unfolding, that it was always true. There is a silent architect behind every moment of your life, a sculptor that carves your reality, not with hands, but with thoughts, with beliefs, with quiet assumptions you don't even realize you are making. These assumptions, inherited like the echo of voices you never questioned, paint the sky you see each day. And so much of our suffering, our limitation, our fear, does not come from what is, but from what we assume is true. You have believed that life is hard, that love is scarce, that success is earned through struggle, and that joy must be postponed for some far-off finish line. You have believed, perhaps without ever saying it aloud, that your worth must be proven, that your beauty must be validated, that your dreams must be justified by practicality. And yet, none of these are truths. They are assumptions. Fragile assumptions wrapped in the illusion of permanence. But illusions, no matter how long they've lived in your mind, can be dissolved in a single breath of awareness. The great teacher Jesus once said, "It is done unto you as you believe," and in those words lies the quiet key to your freedom. For what you assume to be possible, what you believe to be real, what you quietly expect from the world becomes the architecture of your experience. Change your assumptions and the world you see, indeed, the life you live must follow. Assumptions are not innocent. They are powerful. They are prayers in disguise, spoken not with lips but with energy. And the universe does not hear what you want, it hears what you are. It does not respond to what you beg, for it mirrors back what you assume to be yours. So if you walk through life assuming betrayal, you will meet it. If you walk assuming love, it will find you. Not because the world changes, but because you do. Let us look deeper then, beneath the surface of your patterns, beneath the reflexes of doubt, beneath the armor you've worn for so long it feels like skin. There in the silence between your thoughts lives a truth so simple, so profound, that it frightens the part of you still addicted to suffering. The truth is this: you are not bound by your past. You are not defined by what has been. You are only ever limited by what you continue to assume is true. And assumptions, like costumes, can be removed. What if you assume that you are already worthy? What if you assume that the universe is friendly, not hostile, that life wants to bless you, not test you? What if you believe that things are always working out for your highest good, even when your ego cannot comprehend how? What if you assumed every morning that love is your natural state and abundance, your divine inheritance? To the mind conditioned in fear, these assumptions sound naive, but to the soul, they are home. To the ego, they are a threat, but to the spirit, they are the beginning of awakening. Rumi, that beloved mystic, once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." But how can pain become healing? Only when the assumptions we have built around it begin to dissolve. Only when we stop assuming that we are victims, that life is against us, that hardship is our identity. Pain transforms when we stop assigning it meaning rooted in fear. Every assumption is a lens, and through that lens you interpret the world. If the lens is cracked with judgment, then love appears dangerous. If the lens is clouded with shame, then joy feels unearned. But you can change the lens. You can pause and question the thought that has governed your behavior for decades. You can ask, is this really true, or is it something I've assumed because someone once told me it was? Perhaps you've assumed you're too old, too late, too broken, too ordinary. And these beliefs have shaped your posture, your choices, your hesitations. But what if they were never true? What if time is irrelevant to the soul? What if healing is not only possible, it's natural? What if ordinariness is a myth and your very existence is a miracle? When you change your assumptions, you don't just think differently, you see differently. The world begins to shift its colors. Opportunities that once felt impossible begin to whisper your name. People reflect back the love you started to give yourself. The very fabric of your reality begins to bend in response to your inner transformation. But the ego resists. It says, be realistic, be careful, Don't assume too much or you'll be disappointed. It clings to the old assumptions like a child clutches a familiar blanket, even when it's tattered and cold. But the soul, oh the soul, it is not here to be safe. It is here to be free. And freedom begins the moment you stop assuming the worst. You were not born to live out a story of inherited limits. You were not born to repeat the same thought patterns that kept your ancestors small. You were born to question, to awaken, to rewrite the script. And the first line of that new script begins with a new assumption. I am not what I was told I had to be. Assume that you are the beloved of the universe. Assume that miracles are your birthright. Assume that joy is not a luxury, it is your compass. And when the mind says, but what if it doesn't work out? Smile gently and respond, but what if it does? The moment you shift your inner stance, the moment you assume your worth, your wholeness, your connection to Source, the universe rearranges itself accordingly, not out of obligation, but in resonance. You are a magnet, not for what you want, but for what you believe is possible. Change the belief, and the magnet changes. There is a Taoist teaching that says, when I let go of who I am, I become what I might be. And what is assumption if not a false identity? A mask that says, this is who I am, this is what I deserve, this is what I can expect. But the soul has no such boundaries. The soul laughs at assumptions. It knows only expansion. It knows only truth. And truth is always bigger than belief. So let your assumptions become lighter. Let them float like leaves in the wind. Let them be questioned, softened, rewritten with love. Assume that your path is sacred. Assume that your desires are divine. Assume that every setback is a setup for deeper grace. Assume that there is no such thing as wasted time, only preparation for the next chapter. And when the old assumptions come knocking, when fear says you're not enough, when doubt whispers it's too late, greet them with compassion, but do not invite them in. You are not obligated to believe every thought that visits you. You are free to choose a new story. Let that story be rooted in wonder. Let it bloom with the fragrance of new possibilities. Let it rise like dawn after a long night of forgetting. Change your assumptions, beloved soul, and you will find that life was never the problem. Your lens was. The moment you change that lens, life becomes not something to endure, but something to embrace. And from that embrace, everything is born anew. The right words arrive, the right doors open, not because you control them, but because you are finally aligned with their arrival. This alignment is not born of force. It does not come from efforting, from manipulating, from bending the world to your will. It comes from surrendering the assumptions that kept you disconnected. It comes from laying down the belief that you must always strive, always prove, always outperform the ghosts of your past. The universe does not speak in pressure, it speaks in peace. And the moment you assume peace as your baseline, life rushes in to mirror it. You have been taught that assumptions must be proven, that faith must be earned. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that what you assume with deep conviction becomes the soil from which reality grows. It is not arrogance to expect goodness, it is wisdom. It is not delusion to trust the path, it is intimacy with the unseen. You are not here to hope from a distance, you are here to participate in the unfolding by choosing your inner weather. Assume light, and your eyes will find it. Assume love, and your heart will magnetize it. Assume expansion, and the walls will begin to dissolve. Life does not give you what you want, it gives you who you are in consciousness. And so the shift is not external, it is inward, quiet, seismic. You rearrange your being, and your outer life cannot help but realign in response. There is no need to wait. The moment is always now. Not someday, not after the wound is healed or the fear is quieted. Now is the only canvas life ever paints upon, and the paintbrush is your perspective. With every assumption you hold, you are adding color to your experience, muted tones of doubt or vibrant hues of trust. The choice is yours. It always has been. Consider this. Perhaps the mountain was never an obstacle, but an invitation to rise. Perhaps the silence you feared was not emptiness, but fullness too sacred for noise. Perhaps the things you assumed were curses were blessings in disguise, wrapped in unfamiliar packaging. Life speaks in paradox. Its gifts often come disguised as endings, its initiations cloaked in discomfort. But when you assume purpose in all things, you begin to receive the wisdom even in the ache. To live this way is to become an alchemist of the soul. You do not deny what happens, you transmute it. You take the raw material of experience and shape it with awareness, and the tool of that shaping is your assumption. Assume that everything is conspiring for your awakening, and even your pain will bow before that truth, not because you wished it so, but because you aligned with a higher order of perception. There is nothing passive about this way of being. It requires presence. It demands intimacy with yourself. It calls you to become aware of the silent scripts running your life and to revise them not with judgment, but with reverence. You are the author. You are the voice behind the voice. And in this realization lies your liberation. So let the old assumptions crumble, not with shame, but with gratitude. They serve their purpose. They brought you here. But they are not required for where you're going. You are stepping into a new relationship with reality, not one of resistance, but of receptivity. Not one of proving, but of allowing. Not one of fear, but of faith so deep it no longer needs to explain itself. This is the sacred rebellion, to assume love in a world that forgets it, to assume peace when chaos clatters at your door, to assume that your being here is no accident, that you are a thread in the great tapestry woven by hands wiser than your own. And so you rise not by force, but by recognition. You do not need to see the whole staircase. You only need to assume that each step will meet you as you move. You do not need the world's agreement. You only need your soul's permission. And the soul has already whispered yes. Now, walk. And as you walk, walk not in haste, but in holy rhythm, each step a declaration that you trust the unseen more than the appearances, that you lean into the invisible arms of grace more than the shifting winds of circumstance. Walk like the ground itself loves your feet, because it does. Walk like the wind carries your prayers ahead of you, because it does. Walk not as one trying to arrive, but as one who never left the sacred path. The world may call you foolish. It may scoff at your quiet confidence, your refusal to panic, your deep and unreasonable joy in the midst of uncertainty. But this is the joy of the awakened. This is the freedom of the soul that no longer waits for evidence to believe in beauty, but sees beauty because it expects to. Not out of naivety, but out of clarity. Not out of fantasy, but out of alignment with the great eternal intelligence that weaves galaxies into being and still has the kindness to rise each morning in your chest as breath. This is the power of assumption sanctified. It is not the clenching hope of the ego. It is the relaxed knowing of the spirit. It is the quiet, unwavering posture of one who has remembered that they are already held. When you assume that nothing is against you, you stop looking for enemies and begin to recognize teachers. When you assume that you are guided, you stop grasping for signs and begin to feel led. When you assume you are loved, you stop seeking permission to be, and you begin simply to be full, radiant, whole. Assumptions are not thoughts, they are states of being. And each one you carry becomes a seed dropped into the fertile soil of creation. What grows is not random. What blooms is what you have affirmed in silence over and over again. And so listen closely to your silence. What assumptions live in the background of your awareness, humming like distant music you've forgotten you're hearing? Do you assume that you are safe in this life, that no matter the waves, there is a deeper current always carrying you home? Do you assume that your worth is not measured in output, but in presence? Do you assume that the same power that paints sunsets and cradles stars calls you beloved? Because if you do, you begin to live differently. You speak slower. You look people in the eyes. You rest more. You forgive quicker. You stop guarding your heart like a wounded warrior and start offering it like a sacred gift. And suddenly, without changing your outer world, everything changes. You are no longer caught in the echo of what went wrong. You are no longer rehearsing the worst. You are no longer preparing for heartbreak, but preparing for beauty. And the universe listens. It always listens, not to your lips, but to your frequency, to your assumptions, to the quiet yes or no that lives beneath every word you speak. This is why miracles appear not where they are deserved, but where they are expected, because expectation is creation. And creation does not come from pressure, it comes from permission. Permission to trust, permission to allow, permission to stop arguing with what is and start collaborating with what wants to become. When you change your assumptions, the mind may panic. It will say, but I've been hurt before, and the soul will answer, yes, and still I remained. The ego will shout, you can't just believe things into being, and the spirit will whisper, that's the only way anything ever comes to life. Every teacher of truth, every mystic who touched the eternal knew this. Life is not what happens, it is what is allowed through consciousness. Assumption is the open door. It is the agreement we make with the divine. It is the way we say without words, I am ready to live in harmony with what already knows how to heal me. And so, begin again. Not tomorrow, now. Assume you are supported and you will begin to notice the invisible hands that have always held you. Assume you are free and you will begin to see the doors you thought were walls. Assume you are loved and you will stop searching for evidence and begin living from the truth. Let this be the moment you lay down the armor of inherited beliefs. Let this be the breath where you stop defending your suffering. Let this be the exhale where you finally say, I no longer assume the worst, I assume the sacred. And watch, as quietly and certainly as dawn, the world around you begins to rearrange itself to mirror what you now know, that heaven was never a place, it was a state of consciousness. And you are home. There is a stillness you touch when you no longer assume you must earn every breath, when you no longer rise each day under the burden of proving your existence. In that stillness you meet the truth of who you've always been, unburdened, unconditioned, unbound. You begin to live not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. And in that remembrance, your steps soften, your gaze deepens. Your life becomes less about the chase and more about the grace of simply being. You see, every assumption that you carry is like a script handed down through generations, some loving, many fearful, and without questioning, you recite them. I must struggle to be worthy. I must be chosen to feel valuable. I must succeed to feel safe. But these scripts were not written by the truth of your being. They were written by those who forgot theirs. And now, in this moment of gentle clarity, you are invited to lay them down, not with rebellion, but with reverence. They served their time, they taught you contrast. But you are not bound to continue the story of fear. Assume now, beloved, that your presence is enough, not because you've done everything right, but because your being itself is an echo of divinity. Assume that joy is not a rare reward for perfect performance, but a natural rhythm your soul wants to remember. Assume that the more you align with truth, the less effort is required. Because truth has its own momentum, it does not need your struggle, only your surrender. This surrender is not a giving up, it is a giving over. A giving over of the reins, the control, the tired habit of believing you must carry the world on your back. You were never meant to bear it alone. The same force that turns seeds into forests and embryos into humans is orchestrating your becoming, but only when you assume that such intelligence loves you, not judges you, that it supports you, not tests you, that it moves through you, not around you. When you live from that assumption, every moment becomes a prayer, every gesture becomes sacred, washing your hands becomes a baptism, sitting in stillness becomes communion. Speaking from the heart becomes prophecy, because life is no longer something to fix it, it's something to witness, to flow with, to trust deeply even when it doesn't look like you thought it would. The assumptions of fear are built on the past. They are stitched together by what didn't work, by who walked away, by what broke. But assumptions of the soul are drawn from the eternal. They are not based on what happened, they are based on what is always true. That you are loved, that you are guided, that you are held by something that cannot fail you, even when it looks like you failed yourself. And here's the miracle. When you shift your assumptions, the past loses its grip. You stop dragging it like a shadow into every new dawn. You stop expecting old wounds to reopen. You stop assuming that life will repeat its darkest chapters, because something in you begins to whisper louder than memory, that was then, and this is now. Now, where a new assumption has taken root, now, where you don't anticipate loss but expect learning, now, where you no longer prepare for betrayal but open yourself to trust, and when the old thoughts come, because they will when they arrive, like uninvited ghosts asking you to assume their shape once more, you breathe, you bless them. And you say, not today. Today I choose a deeper truth. Today I remember who I am. You don't need to fight the old stories. Just stop feeding them. They fade when ignored. They dissolve when starved of belief. And in their place, new stories rise. Not from effort, but from alignment. Stories of worth, of joy, of connection, so real it needs no explanation. Change your assumptions, and you no longer wait for life to prove itself to you. You begin to live as if it already has. You wake each morning as if goodness is guaranteed not by certainty but by choice. And life, in its mysterious wisdom, begins to rise to meet your expectation. This is the dance between the seen and the unseen, between belief and becoming, between the assumption and its unfolding. And the more you trust the rhythm, the more you find yourself carried not by force, but by faith. So keep walking soul first. Let the world catch up. Let the old assumptions fall away like autumn leaves. Let your yes to life be louder than your fear of being wrong. And when doubt returns, as it does, remember this: the assumption that transforms your life is never the one that proves true. It is the one that brings you peace. Choose peace, and the rest will follow. ChatGPT da noi, there is a profound shift that takes place when you no longer place the weight of your joy in the hands of circumstance. When you awaken one morning and realize that how you feel is not a verdict passed down by the world, but a vibration born within you, cultivated not by control, but by the tender audacity to choose a new lens, the lens of divine neutrality, the lens of inner authorship, the lens that no longer asks, what will happen to me, but gently declares, I know who I am, and that is enough. And so, with this new lens, you begin to see the world as it is, not as your wounds interpreted it, but as your soul remembers it. Trees are no longer obstacles to be passed, but teachers of stillness. Rain is no longer an inconvenience, but an anointing from the sky. Even your so-called setbacks start to glisten with hidden meaning, like constellations waiting to be named. The sacred was never absent, it was only unrecognized through the eyes of old assumptions. The human tendency is to brace, to contract in anticipation of pain, to prepare for the worst as if it were inevitable. But the soul does not brace. It opens. It welcomes. It expands not because it is naive, but because it knows that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can truly harm what is eternal within you. The soul walks forward not with calculation, but with communion, with the breeze, with the breath, with the invisible guidance that turns silence into scripture and coincidence into calling. You begin to notice something subtle yet unmistakable. The more you soften, the more the world responds. The more you release the assumption of danger, the more safety reveals itself in unexpected places. A stranger's smile, a timely song, a moment of stillness that meets you like an old friend. It was always there, but now you are available, because now you assume that life is not against you, it is inside you, reaching out to remind you that you are never alone. There is nothing passive about this softness. This is not resignation, it is radical receptivity. The kind of receptivity that says, I no longer need to grip the steering wheel of fate. I no longer need to preemptively defend my heart. I trust the rhythm even when I cannot hear the melody. I trust the unfolding even when I cannot see the map. This trust is not earned, it is chosen, and in choosing it, you step into a higher order of living. One where peace becomes your baseline, not your reward. And what happens next cannot be scripted. For once you live from the assumption that you are carried, you begin to dance with life rather than wrestle it. You speak not to be heard, but to honor the silence behind your words. You act not to be seen, but to align with what feels deeply true. And in that alignment, the anxiety dissolves, the pressure melts. The incessant need to prove yourself evaporates like morning mist in the light of a new awareness. From this place, your desires take on a different tone. They are no longer cries of lack, but expressions of joy. No longer demands for completion, but invitations to expansion. You no longer chase the dream to escape yourself. You live the dream to express yourself. When you live like this, you become luminous. Not because your life is perfect, but because your being is undivided. People feel it. Rooms change when you enter. Not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer carry. The burden of doubt, the armor of fear, the posture of defensiveness. They fall away like old skins that serve their time but are no longer needed. You begin to walk as one who knows the sacred secret, that life is not here to test you, it is here to reveal you. That love is not something to earn, it is the atmosphere you breathe. That wholeness is not a distant mountaintop, it is the unshakable ground beneath your feet right now in this breath. And when the storms come, and they will, you do not curse them, you bless them. For you know that even the winds of sorrow carry seeds of revelation. You no longer assume that pain is punishment. You understand that it too is a portal. And in your willingness to feel it fully, you extract the gold that was hidden in its shadow. This is the alchemy of awakened assumption. And from it, a new world is born. Not outside you, but within you. A world where your peace is not postponed, where your joy is not conditional, where your worth is not negotiated, a world where you live not from fear of what could go wrong, but from love for what already is. And that love is you. And so you come to this final breath in the journey, not as an end, but as a soft return to the beginning. Not as a conclusion, but as a homecoming to the space within you that is always known, always whispered, always waited in stillness. You are not arriving anywhere new. You are simply shedding what you were never meant to carry. The assumptions have fallen like autumn leaves, gently, silently, without fanfare. And beneath them you find yourself not a version polished for the world, not a mask crafted for survival, but the quiet, luminous truth of your being. It is unbothered by circumstance, unmeasured by time, untouched by the noise of 1,000 identities. It simply is. And in its presence, everything you thought you needed to become dissolves into irrelevance. You no longer need to brace against life. You no longer need to predict its winds. You no longer need to prepare for loss before joy has even arrived. You have remembered something holy, that your inner world sets the tone for everything that follows. That your assumption is not a hope, it is a prayer, not a defense, but an offering. And that the universe does not respond to your fear, it responds to your frequency. You begin to trust with your whole being, not because the evidence is perfect, but because the trust itself is the evidence. And in that sacred trust, life begins to meet you, not as a test, but as a mirror that reflects your new assumption, that you are already whole, already guided, already enough. You walk softer now, not because you are fragile, but because you are grounded. You speak with gentleness, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the silence behind your words. You listen not to respond, but to witness. You love not as a transaction, but as your native language. And the world around you, it begins to shimmer, not because the external has changed, but because your vision is cleared. You see the divine where you once saw danger. You feel the presence where you once felt absence. You notice that even in moments of uncertainty, something remains unshaken within you. That something is the soul anchored not in assumption, but in awareness. And awareness needs no defense, no proof, no future outcome to justify its existence. It is the truth behind every truth. There is no need to strive anymore. You no longer chase what you already are. You no longer seek validation in places that never knew how to see you. You no longer pretend that peace is a destination. You embody it breath by breath. And if the winds shift, you let them. If the world changes shape, you welcome it. If love transforms form, you bless its new direction. Because your assumption is no longer rooted in fear of loss, but in certainty of connection. And that connection is unbreakable. It is the invisible thread woven through your breath, your gaze, your being. It is the divine memory that can never be erased, only remembered, only reawakened. So you walk now not as someone trying to find the way, but as the way itself. You speak now not as someone reaching for wisdom, but as wisdom made flesh. You live now not as someone who hopes for miracles, but as someone who recognizes that the miracle is the very act of being alive, aware, and aligned. No more rehearsing disaster, no more rehearsing pain, no more preparing for a storm while the sun warms your face. You assume peace. You assume love. You assume that everything unfolding before you is sacred, even when it is silent. And in that holy assumption, you rest not in passivity, but in profound power. The kind of power that needs no stage, no applause, no armor, just presence, just breath, just this. And now, beloved, you are free.
Founder of one of the world's major religions, Buddha was born Prince Siddhartha in northeast India, near the borders of Nepal. Seeing the unhappiness, sickness, and death that even the most powerful and wealthiest are subject to in this life, at age 29, he abandoned the life he was living in search of a higher truth. The name Buddha is actually a title that translates to the awakened one, or the enlightened one. This is the title given to Siddhartha Gautama, who left behind the princely life at the age of 29 and went on a lifelong search for religious understanding and a way of release from the human condition. It is said that he discarded the teachings of his contemporaries, and through meditation he achieved enlightenment or ultimate understanding. From then on, he assumed the role of teacher, instructing his followers in the Dharma, or truth. His teachings became the basis for the religious practice of Buddhism, which has played a major role in the spiritual, cultural, and social life of the Eastern world, and much of the Western world as well. I have deliberately chosen not to speak on the tenets of Buddhist doctrine, but rather to take this often quoted passage of the Buddha and relate its significance to you and me today, some 25 centuries after the death of the Enlightened One. He said it like this: "Do not believe what you have heard. Do not believe in tradition because it is handed down many generations. Do not believe in anything that has been spoken of many times. Do not believe because the written statements come from some old sage. Do not believe in conjecture. Do not believe in authority or teachers or elders. But, after careful observation and analysis, when it agrees with reason, and it will benefit one and all, then accept it and live by it." The key word in the passage is believe. In fact, the key phrase is do not believe. Everything that you carry around with you that you call a belief has become your own largely because of the experiences and testimonies of other people. And if it comes to you from a source outside of yourself, regardless of how persuasive the conditioning process might be, and irrespective of how many people just like you have worked to convince you of the truth of these beliefs, the fact that it is someone else's truth means that you receive it with some question marks or doubts. If I were to attempt to convince you about the taste of a delectable fish, say, you would perhaps listen but still have your doubts. Were I to show you pictures of this fish and furthermore have hundreds of people come to testify about the veracity of my statements, you might become even more convinced. But that modicum of doubt would still remain because you hadn't tasted it yet. You might accept the truth of its deliciousness for me, but until your taste buds experience the fish, your truth is only a belief based upon my truth or my experience. And so it is also with all of the well-meaning members of your tribes and their tribal ancestors before them. Just because you've heard it, and it is a long surviving tradition, and it is recorded over the centuries, and the world's greatest teachers have endorsed it, is still not a reason to accept a belief. Remember, do not believe it as Buddha instructs. Rather than using the term belief, try shifting to the word knowing. When you have the direct experience of tasting the fish, you now have a knowing. That is, you have made conscious contact and can determine your truth based upon your own experience. You know how to swim or how to ride a bicycle, not because you have a belief about it, but because you have had the direct experience. You are being reminded directly by the Enlightened One of 2,500 years ago to apply this same understanding to your spiritual practices. There is a fundamental difference between knowing something and knowing about something. Knowing about something is another term for belief. Knowing is a term reserved exclusively for direct experience. The Buddha offers you some great advice, and you can see that his conclusion is devoid of the word believe. He says, when it agrees with reason, that is, when you know it to be true based on your own observation and experience, and it is beneficial to one and all, then and only then, live by it. Throughout this recording, I offer you a summation of some of the most famous and creative genius minds of all times. I encourage you to do the same thing with all of the words that have come to you from beyond this contemporary world as with the words that have been handed down many generations. First and foremost, try the advice in this recording. Ask yourself how it equates with your own reason and common sense. And if it benefits you and others, then live by it. That is, make it your knowing. My research reveals a fairly common definition of intention as a strong purpose or aim, accompanied by a determination to produce a desired result. People driven by intention are described as having a strong will that won't permit anything to interfere with achieving their inner desire. I imagine a sort of pit bull kind of resolve or determination. If you're one of those people with a never-give-up attitude combined with an internal picture that propels you toward fulfilling your dreams, you fit this description of someone with intention. You are, most likely, a superachiever and probably proud of your ability to recognize and take advantage of opportunities that arise. For many years, I've held a similar belief about intention. In fact, I've written and spoken often about the power of intention being just what I've described above. Over the past quarter of a century, however, I've felt a shift in my thinking from a purely psychological or personal growth emphasis toward a spiritual orientation where healing, creating miracles, manifesting, and making a connection to divine intelligence are genuine possibilities. This hasn't been a deliberate attempt to disengage from my academic and professional background, but rather a natural evolution that's been unfolding as I began to make more conscious contact with spirit. My writing now emphasizes my belief that we can find spiritual solutions to problems by living at higher levels and calling upon faster energies. In my mind, intention is now something much greater than a determined ego or individual will. It's something almost totally opposite. Perhaps this comes from shedding many levels of ego in my own life, but I also feel the strong influence of two sentences I read in a book by Carlos Castaneda. Castaneda's words were, quote, "Intent is a force that exists in the universe. When sorcerers, that is, those who live of the source, beckon intent, it comes to them and sets up a path for attainment, which means that sorcerers always accomplish what they set out to do." Unquote. When I read those two sentences, I was stunned by the insight and clarity it gave me about the power of intention. Imagine that intention is not something you do, but rather a force that exists in the universe as an invisible field of energy. I had never even considered intention in this way before reading Castaneda's words. I wrote those two sentences down, and then I had them printed on a card and laminated. I carried the laminated card with me into the catheter lab for my minor surgical procedure, and as soon as I could, I began talking about the power of intention to anyone who would listen. I made intention a part of every speech I gave. I immersed myself in this idea to use it, not only for my own healing, but to help others use the power of intention to carry them where they're fully equipped to go. I had experienced what is called satori, or instant awakening, and was intent on offering this insight to others. It had become clear to me that accessing the power of intention relieved so much of the seemingly impossible work of striving to fulfill desires by sheer force of will. Since that defining moment, I've thought of the power of intention in virtually all of my waking hours, and books, articles, conversations, telephone calls, items arriving in my mailbox, and arbitrary works I might be looking at in a bookstore all seem to conspire to keep me on this path. I know that intention is a force that we all have within us. Intention is a field of energy that flows invisibly beyond the reach of our normal, everyday, habitual patterns. It's there even before our actual conception. We have the means to attract this energy to us and experience life in an exciting new way. The meaning of omnipresent intention. Try imagining a force that's everywhere. There's no place that you can go where it isn't. It can't be divided and is present in everything you see or touch. Now extend your awareness of this infinite field of energy beyond the world of form and boundaries. This infinite and visible force is everywhere, so it's in both the physical and the non-physical. Your physical body is one part of your totality emanating from this energy. At the instant of conception, intention sets in motion how your physical form will appear and how your growing and aging process will unfold. It also sets in motion your non-physical aspects, including your emotions, thoughts, and disposition. In this instance, intention is infinite potential, activating your physical and non-physical appearance on Earth. You formed out of this omnipresent to become present in time and space. Because it's omnipresent, this energy field of intent is accessible to you after your physical arrival here on Earth. The only way you deactivate this dormant force is by believing that you're separate from it. Activating intention means rejoining your source and becoming a modern-day sorcerer. Being a sorcerer means attaining the level of awareness where previously inconceivable things are available. As Carlos Castaneda explained, the task of sorcerers was to face infinity, or intention, and they plunged into it daily as a fisherman plunges into the sea. Intention is a power that's present everywhere as a field of energy. It isn't limited to physical development. It's the source of non-physical development as well. This field of intention is here, now, and available to you. When you activate it, you begin to feel purpose in your life, and you'll be guided by your infinite self. As you make your metaphorical bow to this power, recognize that you're bowing to yourself. The all-pervading energy of intention pulses through you toward your potential for a purposeful life. Here are a few of the conditioned thoughts that keep your ego in charge of your life and prevent you from materializing what you desire and what desires you. The first is called, I am not in charge of my life. That force is outside me. You can change this perception. Turn your attention away from the ego-dominated thoughts about the circumstances of your life to the present moment. By consciously noticing your breath, the sounds, textures, smells, and scenes that the life force is experiencing through you. A second conditioned thought says, people cannot manifest. It is all a function of the cosmic throw of the dice. It's all just luck. Well, blaming luck or some external invisible force that controls the universe is a habit of conditioning that leads to disempowerment and ultimately to defeat. You are the universe. It is not something outside you. You are that force which is in everything, even the things that have previously failed to show up in your life. Remember, as you think, so shall you be. If you think you can't, you're right, and that is precisely what you will see showing up in your life. A third conditioned response, or thought. I have tried before and it's never worked for me. Here the conditioned response is believing that once having tried and failed, further efforts will yield the same results. Let go of your obsession with the past and with trying, and instead remain relaxed and casual in the moment. Your past is an illusion. It is the trail that is left behind you, and a trail behind you cannot drive you today, regardless of what you choose to believe. All you have is now, and you have never tried anything. A fourth conditioned thought. Only highly evolved beings can manifest. Here again, this is the ego saying that you are separate and distinct from your spiritual teachers and others who live at the highest levels. Relinquish those thoughts and replace them with seeing yourself as connected to everyone by that unseen life force that is your divine essence. Think of this definition of enlightenment: to be immersed in and surrounded by peace. Your highest self only wants you to be at peace. It does not judge, it doesn't compare or demand that you defeat anyone or be better than anyone. You know your highest self by listening to the voice that only wants you to be at peace. That's what enlightenment is. The purpose of the highest self is to assist you in this effort. You do this by creating an inner sanctuary that is yours and yours alone. Go to this silent inner retreat as often as you can and let go of all attachments to the external world of the ego. As you go to this sanctuary, a light will be born within you that you will come to know and respect. This light is your connection to the energy of manifestation. Here are a few suggestions to nurture trust in yourself and in that oneness. The first is called, begin by admitting your confusion or failures. When you're honest with yourself about every aspect of your life, you discontinue identifying with separateness. You then become ready for the insight that trust in yourself and trust in ultimate truth are one and the same. A second suggestion is to keep in mind that you cannot go to a higher ground if you're hanging on to a lower level. You cannot leave the physical world if you're so attached to it that you refuse to let go. The concept of trust involves surrendering to and trusting the God force. The third suggestion is to acquire a rebellious attitude toward the philosophy that preaches a style of God as boss, who is authoritarian and a benevolent tyrant. Rejection of this model does not mean that you are an atheist, but rather a believer in the true meaning of divinity. A fourth suggestion is to remember that trusting does not mean you never experience life's valleys. There will be peaks and valleys as long as you live in this physical plane. Do not abandon trust when your ego thinks things should be different than they are. It is better to embrace trust when darkness is present, knowing that light will follow. Begin to look for the lesson in the darkness, rather than cursing it. And a fifth suggestion is to take your serious problems and turn them over to God. Say something like the following: I've not been able to resolve these issues in my life. I would like to show my trust in the divine force by simply turning them over to your divine hands, which I know are also mine, and I trust that this action will lead to a resolution of these problems. A sixth suggestion is to remember that the presence of complete trust is evident in your life when what you think and feel and do are all balanced and in harmony. To say, I believe in a healthy body, and to practice eating in unhealthy ways dissolves trust in yourself. When you are incongruent with your thoughts, you are showing a lack of trust in the divinity that is your essence. And finally, a seventh suggestion: begin a meditation practice of contemplating the supreme principle that is beyond the pettiness of this world. Meditation is not merely making the mind think that it is meditating. Meditation is literally the embodiment of truth and trust. It is knowing that I can confront myself in a spirit of serenity and that what I seek will be attracted to me. This, then, is the energy of manifesting, and it comes most frequently when the mind is quiet. It is the quiet mind that comes in contact with the truth. This process of closing my eyes and becoming serene gives me the ability to tap into that source of inspiration. Inspiration, the very word comes from in spirit. William James once wrote, "There is a law in psychology that if you form a picture in your mind of what you would like to be, and you keep and hold that picture there long enough, you will soon become exactly as you have been thinking." William James, an American philosopher, psychologist, and teacher, was a gifted writer in the fields of theology, psychology, ethics, and metaphysics. William is considered by many to be the father of modern psychology. In this one brief statement, he offers a powerful tool for all of us to use each and every day of our lives. This process of forming a picture in our mind is often referred to as visualization and is based on the biblical idea, "As ye think, so shall ye be." This goes well beyond the idea of positive thinking. If you want to see your life work at an entirely new level, I encourage you to discover how this law works for you personally. We think in pictures, just as we dream in pictures. Not words, sentences, or phrases, but mental images. The words are symbols enabling us to communicate or describe those pictures. It is this picturing process that William James is saying that you control with your free will. If you can learn to hold those pictures long enough without allowing anyone to weaken them, you will actually convert those pictures into your reality. You will become a co-creator of your very existence and all that shows up in your life. I have written an entire book and produced a recording based on the principles involved in this process called Manifest Your Destiny, and I choose not to repeat those 9 principles here. What I will do is offer you what I think of as the 4 R's for putting this idea to work beginning today. Here are the 4 R's in one sentence. What you really, 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 really want, you will get. The first R stands for what you really wish. Here is where you form a picture of what you would like in your life, such as a promotion, a new car, weight loss, non-addiction, or whatever. Once the picture is formed, you wish for it by seeing yourself in the job or driving the new car or at your desired weight or non-addicted. Everything you manifest begins with a wish based upon an inner visualization. The second R stands for what you really desire. The difference between merely having a picture in your mind that you wish for and a desire is in your willingness to ask for it. Ask and you shall receive is not an empty promise. Whatever it is that you have wished for in your imagery, ask out loud but privately to receive. God, I am asking for your cooperation in bringing this picture to me in a material way. The third R stands for what you really intend. Now you take the picture which you have wished for and asked for, and you frame it into a statement of intention or will. It goes like this. I intend to bring this picture into my world with the cooperation of whatever you prefer to name as the creative intelligence. There's no room here for doubt with such statements as, if everything works out okay, or if I am lucky. A statement of intention is based on the law that William James stated for you at the beginning of this passage. The fourth R stands for what you feel really passionate about, or what I call the hardening of the will. You are unwilling to allow anyone to discourage your passionate purpose or put a damper on your picture. You resist the negative opinion of others, and you remain silent as much as possible on what it is that you intend to produce into your life. This passion is what William James meant by, and you keep and hold that picture there long enough. Those who are really, 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 really accomplished at attracting into their lives all that they desire are by no means lucky, nor do their circumstances create their desires. They have all 4 R's working for them at all times, and particularly the fourth R, which is really passionate. Virtually everything in my life, including all of my books and tapes, are the result of applying this law in psychology. It all begins with a wish. This recording, along with the book, began with a wish that I could write a book and produce a recording that interpreted the great wisdom of the people I've so admired all of my life and what they offer all of us today, even though they've all left our planet. I then expressed this desire to my wife and my agent along with my editor at the same time as I asked for the ability and the cooperation of the universe in bringing it all about. This was followed by an intention to create such a book and record it, which I relayed to the various people and departments involved in the publishing process. Some liked it. Some were a bit skeptical, telling me all the reasons why poetry analysis were not popular, and some discouraged me. I had my picture of the book, and I loved the idea of bringing these great masters to my readers and to those who listened to my tapes. Finally, my passion took over, and it was impossible for me to ignore my picture. As William James said, "You will soon become exactly as you have been thinking." And here it is. You're listening to it right now. The key to this is putting all 4 R's to work and really using them. What is it that you weren't willing to do to make it happen, is my response to the question I frequently hear as to why something didn't materialize as pictured. When the passion is there, and you refuse to allow any interference from any external source, there is nothing that will stop you. According to William James, it's the law. English philosophical poet Percy Bysshe Shelley rejected all conventions that he believed stifled love and human freedom and rebelled against the strictures of English politics and religion. Percy Bysshe Shelley's poetry was his legacy to all of us on the importance of passionately living our lives every day. Living life passionately has its own tremendous rewards, which are intensified when one is aware that death, in its arbitrary way, can come at any unexpected moment, as it did for Shelley. This man was a fervent idealist who wrote of his love for love and his passion for passion. He completed his enormous treasury of poetry and prose by the age of 29, when he died in a boating accident during a storm. Not only does his poetry speak to all of us of his enormous passion, but so does his life as well. He took up causes, risked his fame and his life, and drank up every moment of his life. The poem quoted here, titled Love's Philosophy, conveys a glimmer of the passion that Shelley felt in his idealistic heart. The fountains mingle with the river, and the rivers with the ocean. The winds of heaven mix forever with a sweet emotion. Nothing in the world is single, all things by a law divine, in one spirit meet and mingle. Why not I with thine? See the mountains kiss high heaven, and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother. And the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What is all this sweet work worth, if thou kiss not me? This poem says to me, as does so much of his romantic poetry, feel the love for those you adore and express it with fervor, otherwise live your life in frustration. Love, the passionate variety, is that inner sense of longing that pervades every thought, every waking moment. It is a state of bliss that we usually equate with sexual or romantic feelings when they are ecstatically shared with our lover. All of that mingling and mixing and clasping and kissing between the rivers, winds, mountains, flowers, and moonbeams are Shelley's metaphors for that shared state of bliss. Why, he implies, would you choose the frustration of not expressing those feelings? I can recall the aching I have felt at various times in my own life for a love that I was unable to share with someone. I think I felt as though I'd died and gone to heaven when that love was made manifest by long embraces and kisses and union. But there is also passion in other circumstances, like the ecstasy of creation. When we consider the matter of having passion in our lives, it is important to pay attention to the things that we feel passionate about. Shelley speaks of a love and a joyful heart that is able to appreciate the beauty of our world and all of those we feel connected to. His is not exclusively a passion that keeps us enslaved to our sexual ecstasies. What he is describing is living your life not as if today were the first day of the rest of your life, but as if this were the only day of your life, which of course it is. And sharing your passion, because a shared joy is a way of doubling one's joy. Too often we find ourselves bogged down in a serious approach to life, using our minds to keep us in a state of angst, or even worse, indifference. Joy and ecstasy come from within. They cannot be purchased at any price. We are all seeking joy and happiness, and often feeling it is not a proper state of mind when it arrives. The key to knowing this state is to put passion into your life, but also your recreation, your vocation, and in all of your observations of yourself intermingling with this glorious universe. There is so much to be passionate about. I have found that people who have a passion or a strong will for what they want to achieve, and who do not allow others to smear or sully their inner pictures of what they want to manifest, always seem to get what it is they are desiring in their lives. Shelley lived out of his passionate idealism with every breath and heartbeat. His passion is reflected in his magnificent poetry. To put this passion to work into your own life, first, know that you are a part of a joyful universe. Allow your romantic, ecstatic, joyful emotions to appear more frequently in your daily life. When you feel joy, experience it and then express it. As it says in the New Testament, joy is the fruit of the Spirit. Don't deny yourself that fruit. Secondly, write your own poetry. Take the time to record your feelings of passion. Whether your passion is pottery or antique furniture, mathematics or music, express it in your own words. Third, give yourself permission to be a passionate person. Be passionate about anything or anyone you choose without interference from your inner critic. When that inner critic tries to make you feel foolish, gently but firmly tell it to wait for you in the lobby and invite it to rejoin you later if you want it. And fourth, tell those you love how you feel about them as often as possible. This will give you the opportunity to share your joy, and by doing so, doubling it.
A motivated person is generally thought of as someone who has goals and who has objectives and is trying to get someplace else and has sort of an inner vision of where they would like to be, and they work hard and they get up early and they leave a little bit late and they have all kinds of good work habits and so on, and they're said to be highly motivated. And that's not inspiration. That's motivation is you get a hold of an idea and you take it with you and you carry it through to its logical conclusion. That's a motivated person. Inspiration is not where you get a hold of an idea and take it where you want it to go. It's where an idea gets a hold of you, and it takes you where you were intended to go in the first place. You know you remember Arthur Miller? He died about a year ago, the great playwright. Most of us had to read The Death of a Salesman or The Crucible. Well, he was 88 years old, and he was interviewed in the New York Times, and they asked him a question. Now, he had a play on Broadway at 88, and they asked him a question. They said, "Are you working on another play?" And here was this man who was soon to be 90, who said, "I don't know." He said, "But I probably am." And I think it was one of the great inspirational moments in my life reading that, and it was really one of the things that motivated me to write a book about inspiration from this perspective, that there are things that get a hold of you. Now, Mozart was described this way, that he would have what he called lively dreams, and he said that these symphonies would present themselves to him, and it was almost as if they were already written, and he would have to get them out and record them and so on. Now, you probably have experienced this. Most creative people who've done a lot of particularly creative work understand this. Rumi, the great Persian poet, said, he said, "The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep." And what he was saying there was that when you are closest to God, between 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, which is the best time for almost all of us, and almost everyone listening will awaken at one time or another between the hours of 3 and 4 and then go right back to sleep. But if you could understand that that's a wake-up call for you to be able to do what it is that you were designated to do, what you signed up to do, what your spirit is telling you to do, because inspiration is just about being in spirit. And when I get up when I'm writing, I get up between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and I go out. I live on Maui, and I go out onto my writing space out there. And thank you, by the way, all of you, for my place on Maui. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful place, and I appreciate you getting it for me. I mean that. I say that, but I mean I'm always in a state of gratitude for all of the people who have supported the work that I have done. And at any rate, so I go out there and I sit down, and there are times, I don't know if you've had this experience, Mark, but I sit down and I write everything by hand, everything, and I just allow it to flow through me. I allow it to flow through. I take a purple pen, which is the highest energy of the rainbow, and I allow it to come through me. And there are times when I sit there at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I allow this information to come through my heart and onto the page, and I sit there and I wonder what's coming next. And oftentimes I'll read it, I'll think, I didn't even know I knew that. And then if I get stuck on something, or if I'm just not quite sure about something, I'll just reach over, and sure enough, there will be in a book that I've just grabbed off of the shelf or that's laying there. I'll just pick it up and open it up, and exactly what I needed will be in there. It's like when Patanjali said, dormant forces come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. What happens is that when you get yourself into that spirit and you allow it to flow through you and to work with you and to work for you and support you, it's taking you where you were destined to go.
Henry David Thoreau was Harvard educated, but chose the unpopular career of writer and poet to satisfy his soul's urge. A force in the New England Transcendentalists, along with Emerson, he loved nature, freedom, and individuality. Listen to this passage from Walden. If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured and far away. The one comment that I am most pleased to hear from those who have read my books or listened to my tapes over the years goes like this. Your words finally reassured me that I am not insane. All my life people have been telling me there's something wrong with me for the way I think. Your words made me realize that I'm not crazy. I think that it was in reading Thoreau that I had the very same kind of epiphany. I have often imagined myself in the shoes of Thoreau, living simply and deliberately in the woods, being self-sufficient and writing down what I felt most deeply in my soul. But more than writing it down, the idea of living these ideas, regardless of how others perceived me or reacted, seemed somehow noble. Within each of us there is a voice that whispers, take the risks, pursue your dreams, live life to the fullest. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, why not? Then outside of us there are voices that scream, don't be a fool, you're going to fail. Be just like everyone else. If you do what you want, you're being selfish and you're hurting others. These loud, incessant dictates of our companions urge us to keep up with them and threaten to ostracize us when we fail to do so. I have observed that society in general always seems to honor its living conformists and its dead troublemakers. Everyone who has ever made a difference in any profession has listened to the music he or she hears and proceeded independent of the opinion of others. In doing so, they are labeled troublemakers, incorrigibles, even misfits. Yet they become highly respectable after death. This includes Henry David Thoreau, who was vilified for his position in his essay on the necessity of civil disobedience, and jailed for refusing to obey what he considered absurd rulings. Yet today he is required reading in virtually all high schools and universities. The beat that you hear within yourself is your connection to your soul's purpose. It will continue to plague you when you ignore it or suppress it in an attempt to conform with society. Those who implore you to march to the beat they hear are often well-intentioned and coming from a position of love for you. They'll tell you, I only have your very best interest in mind, and I am the voice of experience. You'll be sorry if you don't follow my advice. You listen and you try so hard to be just like everybody wants you to be. Yet that nagging drum beat that no one else seems to hear faintly thumps in the farthest reaches of your awareness. If you continue to ignore it, you will live a life of frustration. You may even learn to suffer in comfort, which is the very best you'll be able to achieve. Thoreau is speaking directly to you from the mid-19th century about your own self-sufficiency and happiness. Whatever it is that you feel compelled to be or do is the voice of your soul pleading with you to have the courage to listen and act upon the melody only you hear, as long as it does not interfere with anyone else's right to pursue their dreams. And so it is with those around you who are also hearing a drumbeat that is foreign to you. They too must be allowed to step to the music they hear, even though it may sound strident and off-key to you. If everyone marched to the very same music and no one ever strayed from that conformity, we would all still be living in caves and preparing the same old recipe. Take one whole buffalo, skin it, burn it, and devour it. Progress is the result of individuals first listening to what their hearts tell them, and then acting on those messages despite the protestations of the tribe. Imagine yourself walking through the woods with Mr. Thoreau back in the 1840s before the Civil War. His observations were based not on some philosophy he had read or heard, but from his own direct experience of feeling the outrage of conformity and seeing the horrors of how Native Americans were being treated by the white man. He knew that to go along with the popular idea of removing Indians from their lands was our very own Holocaust. And so he left to live in nature and experience self-sufficiency away from the pressures of the larger group. He did not keep step with his companions, and at the time he was criticized for it. Yet time has revealed him to be one of those troublemakers we revere. Walk with Thoreau in your own mind. Listen to the voice you hear and the drumbeat only you can feel, and honor it, while honoring it in those you love as well. It is the ultimate act of unconditional love. While it may not get you any awards while you are alive, you can take comfort in knowing that you fulfilled your own divine purpose and encouraged others to do the same. To put Thoreau's advice into practice, first, refuse to evaluate yourself as sane or insane on the basis of how you fit in with the expectations of those around you. If you feel it and it harms no one, then it is authentic and very sane. Second, remind yourself that you will have to incur the misunderstanding and perhaps even the wrath of those in your immediate tribes for having the temerity to march to your own drumbeat. Don't take it personally, even for one moment. It is merely a strategy to get you to conform, and when you fail to react, the wrath will quickly disappear. Third, allow those in your immediate sphere, family and friends, to have the joy of blissfully marching to their own beat without having to explain or defend their choices. You will be substituting anger and resentment for peace and love, and everyone will enjoy the original music they hear. English poet and dramatist of the Elizabethan and early Jacobean period, William Shakespeare is the most widely known author in all of English literature. To read William Shakespeare is to become lost in his unprecedentedly rich and inventive use of the English language. I decided to present this selection on the quality of mercy from The Merchant of Venice because I feel these are the most profound and practical 14 lines ever written on this human attribute. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself, and earthly power doth then show like as God's, when mercy seasons justice. Living with a spirit of mercy and putting it to use each day is the way to tame our more base and primitive instincts while nurturing love and compassion. When we are hurt by others, our first impulse is usually to get even. Revenge rather than mercy is what our more savage side urges. Yet Shakespeare defines this quality of mercy, which he equates as an attribute of God, as it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, it is twice blessed. The first blessing of mercy or compassion is on you, the giver. This message summarizes much of the wisdom that the psychological literature has to offer. That is, be compassionate with yourself. Do not judge yourself harshly when you make a mistake or fail to live up to some standard. Be of such a mind that you can detach from the misconduct or failure and be gentle and loving with yourself. Forgive yourself for being so human as to have wandered around in your darker corners and emerged embarrassed or disappointed with your behavior. Give yourself mercy, a quality that Shakespeare says becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. And so it becomes you as well. When you take the first blessing of mercy and apply it to yourself, you then open to this potential of offering this quality to him that takes. If you are unable to give yourself authentic compassion, you will never be able to give it to another, any more than you can give love to another if you do not love yourself, or give money to the poor if you have none. This notion of giving mercy away is applicable in all of your relationships, in all areas of your life. Offering compassion to those who have harmed or disappointed you is not a case for being a victim. It is instead a way of saying, I understand, I care, I forgive, but I still do not like it, and I will not tolerate being treated this way or having you think it is acceptable. The difference is not needing to exact revenge or to prove one's superiority. With mercy in your heart, you will find yourself much less distracted and disheartened by the evil behaviors that you see and read about almost every day. You will be able to send the offenders love and not become obsessed with anger, hatred, and eventually the desire for revenge. Put the ideas of this passage by one of the world's greatest wordsmiths into your life by practicing the following. 1. Give yourself the compassion you deserve for any and all past actions. Stop judging yourself so harshly. All of those errors and wrong actions were necessary for you to get beyond that place in your life. Be kind to yourself and eliminate any ill feelings you harbor toward yourself. 2. Once you have stated how you feel and justice has been seen, then let go. Let go now. Don't hold on to grudges and use constant reminders to keep others in a state of guilt while maintaining your own dissonance as well. Let it go. And 3. Turn your most troublesome disturbances over to God. Simply say, "Dear God, I find it so extremely difficult to give mercy in this situation, and I'm turning it over to you completely. I know you will guide me in acting in the most merciful and humane way. This action will free you from your own immobilization and anger and help you to see the saint in the sinner who have just been exchanging notes with each other." Pythagoras once wrote, "Learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb." And during the 1600s, Blaise Pascal wrote these words, "All man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room alone." This is the only piece in this collection of great contributors in which I have elected to highlight 2 writers on the same subject. I've selected 2 men whose lives were separated by over 2 millennia, both of whom in their own times were considered to be the most knowledgeable in the rational fields of mathematics and science. Pythagoras, whose writings influenced the thought of Plato and Aristotle, was a major contributor to the development of both mathematics and Western rational philosophy. Blaise Pascal, a famous French mathematician, physicist, and religious philosopher who lived 22 centuries after Pythagoras, is considered to be one of the original scientific minds. He is responsible for inventing the syringe, the hydraulic press, and the first digital calculator. Keeping in mind the left-brain scientific leanings of these 2 scientists, listen again to their 2 quotes. Pascal, "All man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room alone." Pythagoras, "Learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb." They both speak to the importance of silence and the value of meditation in your life, whether you are an accountant or an avatar. They send us a valuable message about a way of being in life that is not popularly encouraged in our culture. This is that there is tremendous value in creating alone time in your life that is spent in silence. If you want to shed your miseries, learn to silently sit in a room alone and meditate. It has been estimated that the average person has 60,000 separate thoughts each and every day. The problem with this is that we have the same 60,000 thoughts today that we had yesterday, and will repeat them again tomorrow. Learning to be quiet and meditate involves figuring out a way to enter the spaces between your thoughts, or the gap, as I call it. In this silent, empty space between your thoughts, you can find a sense of total peace in a realm that is ordinarily unknowable. Here, any illusion of your separateness is shattered. Most of us have minds that race full speed day and night. Our thoughts are a hodgepodge of continuous dialogue about schedules, money worries, sexual fantasies, grocery lists, drapery problems, concerns about the children, vacation plans, and on like a merry-go-round that never stops. Those 60,000 thoughts are usually about ordinary daily activities and create a mental pattern which leaves no space for silence. This pattern reinforces our cultural belief that all gaps in conversation need to be filled quickly. For many, silence represents an embarrassment and a social defect. Therefore, we learn to jump in to fill these spaces, regardless of whether our filler has any substance or not. Silent periods in a car or at a dinner are perceived as awkward moments, and good conversationalists know how to get those spaces occupied with some kind of noise. And so it is with ourselves as well. We have no training in silence, and we see it as unwieldy and confusing. Thus we keep the inner dialogue going just like the outer. Yet it is in that silent place where our ancient teacher Pythagoras tells us to let our quiet mind listen and absorb, that confusion will disappear and enlightened guidance will come to us. But meditation also affects the quality of our non-silent activities. The daily practice of meditation is the one single thing in my life that gives me a greater sense of well-being, increased energy, higher productivity, at a more conscious level, more satisfying relationships, and a closer connection to God. The mind is like a pond. On the surface, you see all of the disturbances, yet the surface is only a fraction of the pond. It is in the depth below the surface, where there is stillness, that you will come to know the true essence of the pond, as well as your own mind. By going below the surface, you come to the spaces between your thoughts, where you are able to enter the gap. The gap is total emptiness, or silence. These two pioneering scientists, who are still quoted today in university courses, were studying the nature of the universe. They struggled with the mysteries of energy and pressure and mathematics and space and time and universal truth. Their message to all of us here is quite simple. If you want to understand the universe, or your own personal universe, then be quiet and face your fear of sitting in a room alone and going deep within the layers of your own mind. It is the space between the notes that makes the music. Without that emptiness, that silence in between, there is no music, only a noise. You too are silent, empty space at your center, surrounded by form. To break through that form and discover your very creative nature that is in the center, you must take the time to become silent each day and enter that rapturous space between your thoughts. No amount of my talking about the value of daily meditation will ever convince you. You will never know the value of this practice unless you make the commitment to do it.
And what I'd like to do now is share with you what I think of as the essence of getting out of our personal history. You know, Alan Watts described it like this. He said, your life is like a boat, and it's heading up the river at 40 knots. And you're standing on the stern of the boat, looking down as the boat's heading in this direction, and you're looking at the water, and what you see before you is a wake. And he said, you have to ask yourself these three questions about the wake. The first question, what is the wake? And the wake that you're observing is just a trail that is left behind. That's what it is. It's just a trail that is left behind, if you can see that metaphor. And that's your life. And everything that's ever happened to you up until this moment, it's a wake. And the second thing is, what's driving the boat? That's the second question. That is, what's making your life go in this direction? And the answer to what's driving the boat is the present moment energy that's being generated by the engine. And nothing more. That's the only thing that makes the boat go. Now here's the most important question to ask yourself. Is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? That is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? And of course the answer to that is, it's impossible. Can't happen. And most of us, including those of us who are stuck in disease, are believing that the wake is what's causing me to be sick today, or causing this relationship to not work. And this woman whose husband had left her and who had to raise these children and had lived with all of these thoughts of how this shouldn't have happened and what a bastard he was and how wrong that was and so on, was living back here in the wake, believing that all of this stuff that was back here was causing her to be depressed, to be sick, to be unhappy, to be all of the things that she was, when in fact, it's just the way that she was processing that. It's the present moment energy that is generated by our thoughts that creates what it is that we are experiencing now. And if you can get out of the wake, or if you can teach your patients to get out of the wake, how many patients had come to you and told you that I've had back trouble my whole life? It runs in our family. My grandfather had it, my great-grandfather had it, my grandmother, of course I'm going to have it. And they're all in the wake. And they're all anticipating and expecting, and they're literally living this stuff that's back here, when in fact, they have a whole new set of options available to them if you can move into the present moment, if you can move into the now, and redirect the energy that you have into this moment. This is the place where you have an awareness within you that says, I don't go back there any longer. What you think of me is none of my business. I am free from allowing myself to become immobilized or upset or in any way incapacitated on the basis of what is going on outside of me or how other people conduct themselves. I am in charge of my emotional life. I live at bliss.
My feelings come from my thoughts. My emotions, my angers, my hatreds, my love, my positive emotions, my negative emotions are all preceded by thoughts. They're the result of thoughts. They're the physiological reactions to thoughts. And emotions, which are very vital and very important to each one of us, can in fact be controlled by our thoughts in positive ways. I'm not an anti-emotion person. I'm not someone who believes that you shouldn't be emotional. I'm saying your emotions should never be immobilizing. They should never be defended as something that you use to keep yourself from being all that you can be, or explaining it all away because I'm just this kind of person. I've always been this way. I can't help it. That's my nature. That's the kind of person I am. You are the kind of person you have chosen to be as a result of how you use what you are, the pureness of your thought. We're learning through biochemical exploration and engineering. There are enzymes in the brain that release different endorphins into your brain as a result of the way that you think. A person who thinks a positive thought is not just saying, oh, goody, I'm just thinking positive thoughts. They are affecting the chemistry of their body. And when you look at things like schizophrenia and some of the least understood of the mental illnesses, we say, yes, there's chemical imbalances there. And the scientists all get together and say, yeah, it's chemistry. What are you talking about all this thinking stuff? If we can alter the chemistry, we can alter the disease. Of course, it's true. I buy it 100%, but it's only 50% of the battle. What causes the chemistry to change in a human being? What causes an ulcer? Isn't that a chemical change brought about as a result of thinking? Isn't that what it is? Well, the same thing is true of a mental illness. Yes, the chemistry is different, but believe that you control your chemistry. It's your chemistry. You carry it around. It's yours. And every patient who I've ever worked with in the really severely disturbed realm still must understand that they're doing this to themselves. Yes, your chemistry is unbalanced, but don't believe that we're just going to put you on lithium, or we're just going to put you on this drug, and the drug is going to, for the rest of your life, do it. You've got to believe that you can, in fact, alter any chemistry within you through the way that you think. What do you think blood pressure going up when you're under pressure is about? It's a chemical change brought about through thought.